Marley from the Energy Boutique with your energy forecast for Wednesday, August 4th. So the moon is going to be in Gemini for the majority of the day. It is going to go void, of course, around 4:38 p.m. and lock into Cancer at 6:18 p.m. So anytime we move out of that Gemini energy and we move into that Cancer energy, it can feel like coming down off of a very curious high. The moon in Gemini has opened our mind, has pushed us to be social, has really pushed our mental planes to problem solve, to try new things, to communicate our thoughts and feelings. And of course, we go from that high air energy to the heart space. Cancer energy is very sensitive, very emotional, very intuitive. Of course, the moon rules over Cancer, so we have to expect a little bit of an intensity there. And for many of us, we're likely going to feel like time kind of rewound to Cancer season. Why? Because some of the things that we were illuminated to while Cancer season really pushed our boundaries to see where it is that we've been too self-sacrificial, where it is that we've been pouring into other people instead of pouring into ourselves, where it is that we had to build new foundations and relationships, especially in our home and family dynamic. Now we are kind of being reminded of why that is important, why that is necessary, and why we have to stop avoiding certain situations and certain conversations. But before we actually dive deep into that emotional and intuitive energy of Cancer, the moon in Gemini does have a couple of things to wrap up before we move into that particular energy. We have 8 moon aspects taking place here today, out of 11 cosmic aspects taking place. And we are still in the surrendering period. We are building up to this new moon in Leo, this Lionsgate portal. It is a big deal. And the push and pull between, the darker energies, the not so nice thoughts and feelings coming up to really keep us in a holding pattern, we have to overcome. We have to struggle through it. We have to really take that pain and turn it into power. So it is going to be a back and forth challenge up until we get that beautiful ray of light coming in from the new moon in Leo and the Lionsgate portal that will essentially just disintegrate a lot of the negative vibrations that we are allowing to rise to the surface. So the moon in Gemini right out of the gate squares Neptune. Now, Neptune is retrograde in Pisces. This is having a huge effect on our dream state. Many people are reporting very vivid dreams, very disturbing dreams, and that is because when Neptune goes retrograde, we have to kind of smack the rose-colored glasses off of our face and get a good dose of reality. And for many of us, we're not able to process a lot of the pain, the trauma from our past in our waking lives. So, of course, our subconscious brings it to light in a dream state. Now, the moon in Gemini squaring Neptune is a tension. It is a confrontation. And I'm going to tell you, it's not going to feel very good because it's very extreme emotions, very extreme thoughts. Neptune energy, of course, is hypersensitive, very connected to the ether, to the void, to other people's energy, to our environments, and it can become very overwhelming. Now, this Neptune energy also isn't the greatest for clarity. It's also not very realistic. We tend to dive into lies and illusions, especially about ourselves. And then everything becomes so overwhelming that we don't even want to think about it anymore. We don't even want to feel anything anymore. We just want to escape. Now, the moon in Gemini would prefer to unpack all of this baggage because the moon in Gemini really wants to sort through these details, come up with connections, find solutions to some of our problems. But that Neptune energy, very wish-washy, very vague, very much going to shut us down after we reach an extreme point of feeling, of emotion. So at this particular time, Venus actually bumps into Saturn. Venus has been in Virgo, building up her confidence, building up her self-esteem, recognizing where it is that she needs to heal, recognizing where it is that she needs to abandon, picking herself apart. Venus in Virgo, highly critical, very judgmental, especially on oneself. And of course, bumping into the Lord of Karma is really going to shake us up. Now, this is a semi-positive aspect that they're making, so I don't feel like we're going to, have that opportunity for Saturn to kind of give us that negative narrative, but this is going to trigger us to gain our emotional control back. We just kind of had that avoidant energy from the moon in Gemini bumping into Neptune. We became hypersensitive. We became very connected to all of our feels. We got overwhelmed. We wanted to escape from that. And now Venus in Virgo bumping into Saturn, who is retrograde in Aquarius, is trying to show us where we need to push past the boundaries, where it is we need to regain our control, where it is that we need to boss up and push past our comfort zone. And this is going to, this is a tough love energy anyways. That's what Saturn likes to do, is to give us some reality checks, really push us to our breaking point in order for us to recognize that we don't want to stay in the same holding pattern. We truly want to boss up. We want to gain control over our emotions, over our thoughts, and of course, over our reality. So this is a beautiful energy because it leads us into the moon in Gemini, making an aspect with Chiron, retrograde in Aries. As you know, Chiron is the wounded healer, and retrograde is definitely doing an inner transformation, unleashing our spiritual warrior. That moon in Gemini, very much in the mental plane, trying to make sense of things, trying to activate our heart space, get our mind and our heart on the same page. Bumping into Chiron is going to be a beautiful thing because we get to have an aha moment. We get to realize what Saturn earlier was trying to tell us with the reality checks, with that tough love life lesson, where it is that we feel the need to boss up and take control back, and where it is that, we have been playing it safe, especially in the victim narrative. Now, this is going to provide us an opportunity to power up. Again, Chiron retrograde, we're going to tap into our inner warrior. We're going to recognize where it is that we're tired of playing small. We're tired of dimming our light. We're tired of playing by the rules, quote unquote, so to speak. And we're ready to push ourselves to the next level. The moon in Gemini at this particular aspect runs into Saturn. And Saturn is all about kind of showing us the difficult emotions that we've been sitting in, our fears, our insecurities, our vulnerabilities, especially where our self-worth is concerned. Now, again, as I've been talking about this week, we are building towards this Lionsgate portal. This is going to be a huge timeline shift, a huge contract shift, a huge boss up in energy. But the week leading up to this event, it's going to be a constant choppy ebb and flow between feeling really good, building ourselves up, tapping into our confidence, our self-esteem, and then something happening, triggering us to dive back into the darkness, to unearth a lot of the lower vibrational emotions and thoughts so that we can bring them to the surface and allow that spiritual sun of ours to burn it away from our energetic and physical body. So this is very much an aha moment. This is very much a test, a tough love lesson test, where we're starting to contemplate our self-worth. We're starting to contemplate these heavier emotions. Again, things are getting all kinds of intense in us. And in that moment, we have the moon in Gemini bumping into Pluto. Pluto, the god of the underworld, highlighting for us where it is that we've given our power away, where it is that we sit in fear, sit in darkness, sit in pain, sit in toxicity, and where it is that we need to actually cut that head off of that very toxic, negative Nancy snake and take our power back. This is going to be a huge opportunity for us to take all of the things that we've been really struggling with since we woke up, especially our self-worth and our vulnerabilities and our overwhelming emotions, and we're going to be able to actually take a good look at the trauma that we suffered in the past, continuing to keep us in a holding pattern. It's going to make us face our fears, face those heavier emotions, and transform them into something lighter. This is where we have to deep dive into the darkness and pull that emotion, pull that energy to the surface so that the light can get at it and we can transform it into a better form. The moon in Gemini bumps into the sun in Leo. Now, this is going to create a little bit of an inner conflict because, of course, we're still struggling to bring those darker emotions to the surface. This is going to illuminate for us where it is that we've gotten stuck in some very bad habits, especially with the way that we talk to ourselves. The moon in Gemini is our mental plane. It is communication. It is the narrative that we allow to loop in our head, in our heart space, that's keeping us in a little bit of a negative Nancy holding pattern. That sun in Leo, of course, wants us to bust out of that, wants us to take a risk, wants us to put ourselves out there in a different way, wants us to be bold and confident and brave. But right now, we're kind of too attached to all the things that are preventing us from truly standing in the limelight like the sun in Leo wants us to do. Now, lucky for us, the moon in Gemini trines Jupiter. Jupiter in a retrograde, fresh back into Aquarian energy. We really want to grow. We want to expand the mental plane, our perspective. We want to push the boundaries of our comfort zones because we want more for ourselves. And at this particular point in the day, we recognize that we can't have our dream and our vision in this narrative, in this energy, in this rut, in this habit of talking down to ourselves. This is going to trigger for us a buildup. Now we recognize, you know what? I have to dig myself out of this hole. I have to pump myself up. I have to be my own hype girl. This is where we start to build our confidence back again. Of course, Jupiter wants us to renew our faith, wants us to believe in ourselves, wants us to really just kind of stick to the silver linings, to be optimistic about what it is that we have control over and what it is that we're actually looking to manifest and bring into our lives. So the moon in Gemini goes ahead and bumps into Uranus. Now, Uranus, the great awakener, kind of throwing a lightning bolt at us in our mental planes, in our higher intellect. Now, Uranus rules over the higher intellect. Gemini rules over the lower intellect. The lower intellect is very connected to logic and practicality, where the ego and identity have really learned how to linear kind of problem solve, right? We look at things in a different way when we're looking at things from the ego perspective. When we're looking at things from our higher selves, the great vision, if you will, we see that, there are dots to be connected that could help us in our egoic avatar problem situation. But we have to kind of elevate ourselves. We have to attach to the higher intellect, to our higher selves, to the divine source to see what it is that we're missing, what it is that we can push ourselves outside of our comfort zones to do now, to see the bigger picture and how everything is connected, how everything has to happen play by play. Now, the moon in Gemini, with all of this electric energy coming into the higher octave of the mental plane, this can feel very overwhelming as well. This can add a lot of confusion to our mental planes, to our emotional state. This can kind of trigger some emotional chaos. This can make us nervous. If you are an anxious person, you're likely going to have a bout of anxiety hit around this time because that electric energy is a lot to handle in our physical bodies, in our emotional bodies, and in our mental plane. But it is absolutely necessary because, as we know, the minute that we have a great state of confusion, it is because we are about to gain a whole lot of clarity. And the sun in Leo at this particular time trines Chiron retrograde in Aries. It's time to heal. It's time to really dive in and recognize where this confusion, where this emotional chaos needs to be stabilized. And when we recognize what it is that we feel is out of our control, we can identify how it is that we can gain our control back. Now, the sun in Leo, trining Chiron in a retrograde in Aries at this time, we're likely going to be feeling a little bit down on ourselves as far as our self-image goes, and how we present ourselves to the world, and how we show up for our loved ones in our relationships. Now, this is an absolutely necessary critical judgment that we have to cast upon ourselves, because this lets us know the narrative that we've been allowing to loop inside our mental planes, and of course, have a great impact on our heart space, on the walls that we've built, and how we let people get close to us. The sun in Leo, again, just wants us to boss up, wants us to bust away from old habits. We have to kind of recognize that the sun in Leo right now is really transforming into this powerful, confident, brave, bold, king of the jungle lion that he is always meant to be. But again, he's just coming out of his wet kitten stage. So there's a little bit of a image problem there, right? He's recognizing that when he's this wet little kitten that has to retreat from the world in order to, clean himself, bathe himself, get himself back into a presentable state, that he doesn't feel strong. He doesn't feel proud. He doesn't feel bold. He doesn't feel brave. But this transformation of recognizing the process in which he's going through in order to get himself back to a presentable level, this is really building up his confidence. This is building up his self-esteem. And inside of us, all of this energy is building, doing the exact same thing to us, pushing us to a different tipping point where we can start to see ourselves from a different set of eyes. Again, when we act as the observer and step outside of ourselves, we're able to see ourselves from an authentic place instead of a place of egoic judgment inside of ourselves. So this is a beautiful energy right before the moon moves into Cancer. Now again, when the moon moves into Cancer, we take it down to our heart space. We move out of that mental plane. We move back into the heart space. We kind of retreat from our exterior realms. The moon in Gemini pushed us to be out there, pushed us to socialize, pushed us out in the world to kind of connect with other people and absorb new information. The moon in Cancer wants us to pull ourselves inwards, wants to sit with ourselves, find a grounding point, nurture ourselves back to a stable place in our heart and in our head. And the moon in Cancer bumps into Mercury, the ruler of the mental plane, in Leo, very fired up to tell our story, to speak our truth, to be heard. And right now, this is going to be a beautiful opportunity for us to communicate our wants, needs, and desires very, very empathetically, very calmly, and with lots of confidence and clarity. Again, this moon in Cancer is going to be a little bit of a blast from the past, from Cancer season. We came to a lot of realizations where it is we had to boss up our boundaries, where it is we had to start nurturing ourselves the way that we've been nurturing other people. And we might not have had a perfect opportunity to actually communicate our new wants, needs, and desires to those that need to hear it. So we are going to get an opportunity to communicate effectively if that is kind of in the physical realm of what needs to happen. Mostly though, this is about changing the inner narrative about ourselves. That moon in Gemini had a lot of thoughts, triggered a lot of perspectives, and now we're bringing it back into the heart space in order to kind of get these two in agreement on the same page. It's important that we start talking to ourselves with a little bit of softness, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of empathy before we go out and stand firmly in our new truth and speak it out to the world. Now, the caution that I have here is that as we've kind of discovered with this Cancer energy over the past month, we tend to get a little bit too attached to the way things were, or the way things are, even though it's not comfortable. We recognize that we want to move forward, but we're having a horribly hard time letting go of the past. And because this particular aspect is really illuminating the new thought process, the new ideas that we have, the new perspective that we're having, the new ways of thinking that we're trying to adopt, it is going to illuminate how hard it is for us to cut the cord with the old ways, the old narratives, the old perspectives, and truly stand in our power to adopt the new ways of thinking, the new perspectives that we have to have in order to move forward. This will likely bring up some outdated narratives, some outdated emotions. And again, just when we take one step forward, we have to take a couple of steps back. Why? Because those dark force energies this week do not want us making serious progress in enlightening ourselves. So just when we had that moment where we were healing the way that we were seeing ourselves, the way that we were feeling about ourselves, that is a higher vibration. And just as we kind of rise to the next level of enlightenment, that higher vibration, that higher frequency, you best believe those dark forces are coming in to push us down, to put us in those negative vibrations, those negative emotions, to keep us in a lower vibration. And we're not going to let them win. But Mercury is going to go ahead and bump into Neptune. And this is going to provide us with another beautiful opportunity to have an aha moment, to connect the dots, to push ourselves out of that old way of thinking, that old attachment style that we just got illuminated to. And now we can connect to our higher selves and have an aha moment where new information comes in, where we get a new burst of energy, pushing us out of those darker, heavier emotions, thoughts, and waters, and kind of rise again. This is where enlightenment takes place. This is where we gain a bigger vision. This is where we recognize that sticking with the old is only going to deliver us the old situations. We want better. We want new. Mercury in Leo wants nothing more than to speak on the bigger, grander vision that we are seeing, the passion that we have about it, the excitement that we now feel about moving away from old habits, old ways of thinking, and what we could actually accomplish if we just believed in ourselves, if we could just stay in this high vibe, if we could just focus on where it is we want to go and stop focusing on where it is that we have been.